This happened last month. I've been a night shift nurse for a while, but I took on the shifts to help pay off my loans. Most nights were quiet. I did my rounds, gave out meds, and filled out paperwork. I thought it was just another long shift in that old hospital with its flickering lights and unsettling silence. But then came the third night. I was sitting at the nurse's station when I first heard it. Soft footsteps echoed down the hallway. It sounded like someone was tiptoeing on the linoleum floor. I thought maybe it was Dr. Harris making rounds. I didn't think much of it. I kept writing notes, dismissing it as my tired mind playing games. But then the footsteps came back the next night. I was tired. Maybe I was imagining things. The sounds didn't feel right, though. They weren't the casual steps of a coworker, but something unsettling. By the third night, I noticed some patients were missing from their beds. I walked to a few wards and saw empty spaces. I thought maybe they were moved or discharged. But the emptiness nagged at me. I couldn't shake it off. That night, Mrs. Turner called me over. She looked scared, wide-eyed, like she'd seen something that troubled her. "Ethan," she whispered, "there are figures that come at night." My heart sank. I tried to assure her it was just the medication. Deep down, I was beginning to worry. Maybe I wasn't just tired. I didn't mention the footsteps to anyone. I wanted to believe it was just stress or not getting enough sleep. But they didn't stop. They grew louder, as if they were following me. I felt someone watching. I found myself glancing over my shoulder. Then came the last night. I was alone at the station. The silence felt heavier, like it was closing in on me. The footsteps echoed again, closer than before. My heart raced, but I couldn't make myself check the hallway. The thought of what I might find stopped me. Suddenly, from the shadows, I heard a whisper. It was soft, but it cut through the silence. Ethan. I turned and called out, but nobody answered. The hallway stretched empty, my skin pricked with unease. I tried to shake it off, but the presence didn't leave. I leaned against the counter, clutching it tightly. My mind raced with possibilities. I didn't know what was happening. I wanted to believe it was just stress, but this felt different. The footsteps, the whispers, the empty beds, they all twisted together into a knot of dread. I felt trapped. I wanted to leave, but my shift wasn't over yet. I stayed glued to my chair, staring down the dark hallway. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. I was scared but rooted in place, waiting for answers I wasn't sure I wanted. I never expected the night to drag on like this. Time moved slowly, like molasses. I half-heartedly flipped through the logs, trying to focus on anything but the swirling unease in my stomach. Still, the quiet felt alive around me, almost too thick to breathe. Then I heard it again, the faint shuffle of footsteps. My heart surged. They sounded closer than before, deeper in the hospital now. I convinced myself to get up. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe I could catch whoever or whatever was making those sounds. I walked down the hallway with hesitant steps. The overhead lights flickered as if they had a mind of their own. Shadows danced along the wall, creating shapes that made it hard to tell if something was there or just my imagination. I stopped at the first patient room. It was empty. The bed was neatly made, the sheets crisply folded. Panic buzzed in my head. "Just check the other rooms, Ethan," I whispered to myself, but my legs felt heavy. I didn't want to move, yet I pressed on. Each room I peeked into was the same, all empty, nothing but sterile air and the faint scent of antiseptic. As I reached the end of the corridor, I noticed the last room's door was slightly ajar. This room wasn't on my rounds for the night, and I remembered seeing it filled just hours before. A chill crept up my spine. I took a deep breath and pushed it open. What met my eyes made me stagger back. The room was dark, the drapes drawn tight against the outside world. But what shocked me was the figure lying on the bed. It wasn't a patient. It was a woman dressed in a hospital gown, eyes wide open, staring straight at the ceiling. "Mrs. Turner?" I gasped. The air grew heavier, pressing against my chest. I stepped closer, but she didn't respond. Her mouth opened ever so slightly. I leaned in to hear her whisper. "They're coming for me," she said, her voice barely above a breath. Something in her gaze sent ice flooding through my veins. I turned, instinct screaming at me to run, but the sound of footsteps echoed again, this time from behind me. I swung back around, heart pounding. There was nobody there, just the sense of presence, thick and suffocating. Suddenly, Mrs. Turner's eyes flickered to the door, her expression shifting from serene to terrified. "Ethan, they're here!" Before I could process her words, the lights flickered violently, plunging everything into darkness. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. In that moment of complete uncertainty, I could only hear my own breath and the distant echo of footsteps closing in on me. Desperation hit. I needed to find a way out. I stumbled back to the door, hands outstretched. That's when I saw it. A shadow, long and stretched unnaturally, moved at the edge of the hallway. I had to escape before whatever it was could reach me. But as I turned back to warn Mrs. Turner, I felt something cold brush against my arm, and everything went dark. The darkness felt thick and heavy around me. I blinked, trying to adjust, but I couldn't make out anything. It was like the shadows themselves were alive, pulling me deeper into a void. I held my breath, straining to listen. Then I heard it again, the footsteps, relentless and uneven. Panic surged through my veins. I stumbled left, reaching for the doorframe but finding only empty air. I cursed under my breath, forcing myself to take a steadying breath. "Think, Ethan. You were just there," I whispered. "Find the door." I took a cautious step forward, brushing my fingers against the wall, the cool plaster grounding me. I followed the wall, heart racing, my mind a whirlwind of terror and confusion. Just as my fingers met a doorway, the faintest flicker of light burst to life, illuminating the hallway in a soft glow. My eyes shot toward the source. A few feet away, the emergency lights had flickered on, casting long shadows that twisted unnaturally against the walls. But it wasn't the light that made me freeze. It was the sight of a figure standing at the far end of the corridor. I squinted, my heart thumping loudly in my ears. It was a person, a nurse. I couldn't tell. They wore a white coat, but their face was hidden in the shadow, and they didn't move. "Hey! Are you?" I started, but my voice faltered in the silence. The figure didn't respond. A chill crawled up my spine as unease settled back in. I took a careful step forward, trying to close the distance, but then something yanked my attention back to Mrs. Turner's room. I cursed my indecision but turned toward it instead. The last thing I wanted was to leave her there. As I rounded the corner, I pushed the door open again, but the room was empty. Mrs. Turner was gone, the bed neatly made. My heart raced, panic twisting in my gut. "Where did she go?" I muttered to myself. With a renewed sense of urgency, I darted back into the hallway. The mysterious figure was gone, swallowed by the shadows. Frustration welled within me. I should have questioned them, or at least called for help. Just then, the distant sound of laughter echoed from further down the hall, a chilling sound in the otherwise sterile air. It was high-pitched and unnatural, like children playing in a game meant for adults. The hair on my arms stood on end. I wasn't alone. Driven by instinct, I sprinted toward the sounds, my mind racing with thoughts of Mrs. Turner and the dark figure. As I reached the intersection, I skidded to a stop. There were two doors, one leading to the waiting area, and another to the surgical wing. The laughter continued, echoing off the walls. I hesitated. The waiting area was well lit and safer, but the laughter, it tugged at me, pulling me toward the swirling darkness of the surgical wing. I had to know. I stepped into the shadows and was instantly engulfed, the chill wrapping around me like a cloak. "I just want to help," I whispered, though it felt like a lie. But as I ventured deeper, the laughter grew louder, transforming from playful to mocking. That's when I noticed something on the floor. It was a small, bloodied nurse's cap. Fear twisted in my stomach, and I had to fight down the urge to flee. Something was very wrong here. Before I could gather my thoughts, I heard a soft voice, barely audible. "Come play with us." I stopped in my tracks, dread coursing through me. I turned toward the sound, heart pounding. But the hallway ahead was empty. And then the laughter rang out again, piercing through the darkness, turning my blood to ice. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to get out while I still could. But a part of me wanted to find the source of that voice, to understand what was happening. I took a step forward, the sound of my shoes echoing off the sterile tiles. The laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling silence that pressed against my ears. That I reached the end of the corridor, where the walls seemed to close in. Flashes of light from as yet unknown sources danced across the surface, distorting the shadows. As I rounded a corner, the surgical wing door loomed ahead, slightly ajar. I couldn't resist. I pushed it open, my heart racing despite my better judgment. Inside, the light flickered erratically, revealing an empty, cold operating room. The surgical table was caked with dark stains, tools scattered haphazardly around the room. My stomach churned. I had no idea how long they'd been left like this. I stepped inside, instinctively looking for anything that would make sense of the bizarre atmosphere. A shiver coursed down my spine as I spotted a small glass board on the wall. It was meant for surgeries, covered with notes and diagrams. But half of them were crossed out, scribbled in a frantic hand. My brow furrowed as I tried to decipher the words. Not ready, they're not done, and several crude drawings of figures that looked like children. My heart sank. I backed away, trying to shake off the creeping dread. Get out, I told myself. But as I turned to leave, a deafening crash echoed behind me, making me jump. My heart raced, and I whipped around, eyes wide. Overhead, a ceiling panel swung open, swaying like it had been knocked loose. A part of me wanted to run, but curiosity held me in place. Something dark curled in the shadows of the opening, and I realized I was staring at a vent. Frantic instinct kicked in, and I moved closer. I wasn't sure what I wanted to see, but my legs guided me there. Ethan! Don't go near it! A voice hissed from behind me. I spun around. The voice was familiar, but my mind raced trying to place it. I squinted into the shadows and felt a jolt of recognition. It was Jen, another intern. Her wide eyes mirrored my panic. Jen! You're here! I exclaimed, relief flooding through me. But she wasn't smiling back. Her expression was haunted. No one should be here, she said, almost pleading. You need to leave. Now. Before I could ask what she meant, the laughter rang out again, this time louder and echoing around us, shrill and taunting. The sound was closer, pressing in like a presence. My mind raced now. Whatever was happening here felt like it was pulling us in, like we were trapped in some twisted game. Then Jen pointed to the ground. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't noticed until that moment, but we were surrounded by the same bloodied nurse caps I'd seen before, each stained and each a reminder of something terrible. I saw them, I stammered, but my words were stolen by another crash. This time, it came from the room behind us. Without thinking, I grabbed Jen's arm. We have to go. Right now! I yanked her toward the operating room door, praying it wouldn't be our last escape. But as we ran, the laughter began again, louder this time, chasing us with an urgency I couldn't comprehend. We rushed through the door, and I could feel a presence behind us, pushing us forward, deeper into the unknown darkness of the hospital. We burst out of the operating room, the doors swinging shut behind us with a heavy thud. I could still hear echoes of that unnatural laughter, but now they felt distant, as if they were laughing at us from another world. My mind was racing, and I barely noticed as we stumbled into another corridor. Where do we go? I gasped, glancing sideways at Jen. She looked lost, her face pale, eyes darting around as if looking for a way out. We need to find the stairs, she shouted over the fading laughter. Get to the roof. We can signal for help. I nodded, but I felt tethered to the chaos around us. We sprinted down the corridor, the fluorescent lights flickering above, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The laughter faded, replaced by the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing through the hallway. My skin crawled. This way. Jen pointed to a door to our right, and we barreled through it. It led to a small utility room filled with cleaning supplies and storage. I quickly closed the door behind us, my heart pounding. "Why are we hiding?" I whispered, trying to catch my breath. "Those footsteps, they don't sound like anyone who is supposed to be here." Jen's voice trembled slightly. "We can't risk being seen." As I leaned against the door, I suddenly noticed something in the corner of the room. A small window, too high to reach, but it showed a glimpse of the night sky outside. My pulse quickened with the idea of escape. "What if we climb up?" I suggested. "Are you crazy?" She shot back, but the uncertainty in her voice hinted she was considering it. Before I could respond, a loud bang reverberated through the space. The door rattled, and someone began pounding on it from the other side. My heart dropped, and I turned to Jen, her eyes wide with fear. "Stay quiet," I breathed, feeling my throat tighten. The pounding stopped for a moment, only to be replaced by harsh whispers. I couldn't make out the words, but the weight of malice hung in the air. Suddenly, I noticed something else on the floor, small, dusty footprints leading from the storage shelves to the door. They were too small to belong to an adult. My stomach twisted. "Jen," I started, but I was cut off as the whispers grew louder, accompanied by a childish giggle. "Ethan, please," she whispered urgently. "What do we do? Maybe they can't see us here." I crouched down, pulling Jen with me. We ducked behind a stack of boxes, hearts racing in synchrony, clenching our breaths as the whispers faded, replaced by a sickening silence. Then we heard its soft, padded footsteps crossing to our side of the door. They were getting closer. I barely dared to breathe, hoping my pounding heart wouldn't betray us. That's when I saw a shadow flit across the window above, too small to be an adult. The weight of dread bore down on me. Something was moving outside the utility room, something I couldn't see but knew was watching us. A knock echoed from the door, and the whispers returned, now punctuated by that same laughter. I felt a chill race through me. It was time to decide to hide or to run. The silence hung thick in the small room. I could hear my own breath, the steady thud of my heart like a war drum, urging me to take action. I glanced at Jen, her face pulled tight in fear. I didn't know what was outside that door, but I felt it was far worse than whatever lay in the dark corners of this tiny utility room. With a deep breath, I whispered, "We can't stay here." Jen nodded, her eyes darting to the door, weighing the danger on the other side. The giggles echoed again, more pronounced than before, filling the air with a chill that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I took a step toward the door, heart racing. On 3. We bolted for the stairs. Jen's face softened with doubt. "What if we run into whatever's out there?" "We'll take our chances," I urged, gathering my courage. "I'd rather face whatever it is than stay here and let it find us." "Okay," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I counted quietly in my head. 1, 2, 3. We flung the door open and bolted into the hall, adrenaline propelling us forward. The whispers faded into a shocked silence as we crossed the threshold. We sprinted down the corridor, dodging any potential obstacles. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously above us, and I could feel the weight of unseen eyes tracking our movement. I glanced to my left, hoping to catch a glimpse of the elusive figure, but there was nothing. "Ethan, where now?" Jen called as we reached a T-section in the hallway. "There." I pointed to a staircase straight ahead, its door slightly ajar, revealing a dull metal railing. Not looking back, we rushed toward it, each step echoing off the cold tiles below. The laughter returned, a cacophony that sent chills racing down my spine. The sound became louder, seeming to close in around us. I pushed through the door with a hard shove. The stairs spiraled up into darkness, but that was all I needed, a way up, away from whatever haunted these halls. We began climbing, 2 steps at a time, my legs burning with the effort. As we ascended, the laughter turned into something more frantic, the whispers morphing into shrill cries. "They're coming!" Jen panted, glancing back as we reached the 2nd floor. I could barely keep my thoughts straight. "Just keep moving! We're almost to the roof." Suddenly, Something hard struck the landing above us, shaking the very stairs we were on. I paused, looking up. The sound rattled down through the stairwell, drowning out the laughter. The darkness felt alive, coiling around us. Then I heard something else, a voice, muffled and distorted, calling out from above. "Help me!" It echoed through the stairwell, hollow and desperate. "Did you hear that?" Jen whispered, a cold dread settling into her bones. "What do we do?" I asked, frozen in place. I found myself staring at the door leading to the roof. The voice was a plea, each syllable an invitation tangled with suspicion. I didn't know whose voice it was, but my gut told me staying might be worse than leaving. As I hesitated, a shadow darted past the open doorway above. My stomach dropped, and I turned to Jen, ready to bolt again, but before I could say a word, the floor beneath us groaned ominously. Then everything went dark. The flashlight I had clipped to my belt died, plunging us into a thick, impenetrable black. The laughter rang out once more, louder, clearer, sending a surge of panic through me. I felt Jen clutch my arm, her grip tight and trembling. I squinted, trying to see anything beyond the blinding dark. "We have to find a way out. Now!" But before I could react, the whispers surged back, now swarming around us, drowning out everything else. "Come play with us forever." That's when I knew we weren't alone, and whatever was in this hospital was more real than I ever imagined. The darkness pressed against us, thick and suffocating. I took a shaky breath, trying to calm the panic rising in my chest. "Jen, we need to move," I urged, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Let us head up." "Up? But what if there's just trust me," I said, cutting her off. I couldn't let fear paralyze us. I tugged her along as I searched the wall for the railing of the staircase. My fingers brushed against the cold metal, the feel of it grounding me. We climbed carefully, listening intently for any sign of danger. Each creak of the stairs felt amplified, a warning that something was lurking close. The laughter faded for a moment, but the whispers grew louder, filling the void. Join us, what do they want?" Jen's voice trembled beside me. "I don't know," I whispered back. "But they sound like children." Just then, a scrape echoed through the stairwell, sharp and jarring. Jen stopped in her tracks, pulling away. "Did you hear that?" "Yeah, I did." My heart raced again, this time mingling with confusion. "Stay close." As we reached the third floor, the darkness receded slightly. We stumbled into a long corridor illuminated by faint emergency lights. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting in ways that felt wrong. I looked at Jen, her wide eyes mirroring my own fear. "There's another staircase there," I said, pointing to a door at the far end. "We can climb to the roof from there." Before we could take a step, a sound rang out, a loud crash, like something heavy being thrown against a wall. I froze. What was that? "Maybe it's just the old building settling?" Jen suggested weakly, her voice faltering. "No. That didn't sound like the building." I felt the reality of our situation sinking in. Whatever was happening, it was increasingly real, and we were trapped in a maze of fear and confusion. I turned to her, and my gaze was drawn to a flicker at the end of the hall. A shadow darted across the open space between us and the exit. My blood ran cold. "We have to move. Now." As we surged forward, the laughter crescendoed, swirling around us, engulfing us in its children's chorus. I felt an icy draft snake through the corridor, whispering secrets that didn't belong to us. We reached the door at the end of the hall, but as I reached for the handle, it rattled violently, as if something was on the other side trying to break through. I stepped back, instinctively shielding Jen with my body. "What if it's one of them?" she whispered, her fear palpable. I could only shake my head. The door seemed to pulse with a life of its own, slamming against the frame with enough force to make me stagger. "Run!" I shouted, pulling Jen back as I spun around, the way we came now looking more menacing. Then the shadows shifted again, and I caught sight of something blocking our path. A figure stood there, a child with a pale face, eyes wide and dark like bottomless wells. It grinned at us, teeth sharp and gleaming. "Come play." In that moment, I realized we had wandered straight into a trap, and the way out wasn't what I had hoped. "Ethan!" Jen screamed, panic surging through her voice, and that's when I felt the creeping sensation of something crawling up my back. "Let us go!" I shouted as I turned to flee. But the laughter picked up again, a haunting melody that promised we wouldn't escape easily. My heart raced as I pulled Jen with me, but the shadows loomed closer, swarming. Every instinct in me screamed to fight, but all I could think was that time was running out. We raced back down the corridor, the sounds of our footsteps swallowed by the madness around us. The laughter echoed, twisting into something darker, pressing in on us from every side. I could feel Jen's hand slipping in mine, fear making her grip slippery as we darted past the flickering lights. "Ethan, where do we go?" she gasped, her breathing rapid and shallow. "Anywhere but here," I shouted, desperate to sound confident, but the panic clawed at my insides. Just when I thought we were clear, another crash erupted from behind us. It felt closer this time, as if whatever pursued us had decided it was done playing games. Without stopping to think, I led Jen toward the nearest door, flinging it open to reveal a storage room littered with outdated medical supplies. The smell of antiseptic was overpowering, mixed with something sweet and rotten. "Hide!" I hissed, pushing her inside. I followed, shutting the door just as the laughter grew into a dissonant choir. The walls felt as if they were closing in, and I held my breath, listening. The room was dim, but I could see the shapes of peeling boxes and a rusty gurney nearby. I pressed my back against the door, trying to steady my racing heart. Whatever was out there, it was close. I could hear soft footsteps, scuttling in the hallway like insects. "What are we going to do?" Jen whispered, her voice quaking. "We can't stay here. We have to wait until it passes," I replied, trying to keep my voice low and calm. I peered through the tiny window on the door. The shadows moved, shifting in the dim light, but I couldn't see anything clearly. Just shapes, darting like a disturbed nest of hornets. Then I saw it. A small figure darted past the door, head down, hooded and faceless. I could see its small hand reach up toward the door, fingers curling like claws. Panic surged through me. "Wait!" I mouthed to Jen, heart hammering. I couldn't risk it. But then everything changed. The door rattled, a heavy force pushing against it. I felt the pressure against my shoulder as the knob twisted, the wood creaking ominously. "They know we're in here," I said, my voice just above a whisper. Jen's eyes went wide, fear etched on her face. "What do we do?" "They'll get in," she said, her breath hitching. I fumbled for the nearest object. My fingers found an old metal tray, an instrument of forgotten purpose. "If they come in, we'll fight," I decided, though I knew it sounded more brave than it felt. As the door shuddered under the weight of whatever was outside, I caught a glimpse of movement behind the horde of shadows beyond our sanctuary. More footsteps were approaching, and they weren't alone. A deep, raspy voice carried through the voice of a child. "Come play with us forever." I turned to Jen, but before I could speak, the door was thrown open. We braced ourselves, and that's when I realized there were more than just children. Shadows, others like them, shapes of people we couldn't trust or recognize, filled the doorway. "Run!" I shouted, pushing Jen behind me as we burst forward into the hall, now truly swarming with apparitions. As we dashed back out into the corridor, I noticed something shiny glinting near the floor. Without thinking, I reached for it just as we leaped over the threshold. That's when everything went dark. I hit the ground hard, the air knocked from my lungs. My senses echoed back to life. I blinked against an oppressive darkness, trying to regain my bearings. My heart pounded, and I struggled to take deep, steadying breaths. It felt like I was alone. "Ethan?" Jen's voice trembled in the dark. Relief washed over me at the sound. "I'm here," I replied, struggling to push myself up. I reached out, feeling for her arm. The cold floor felt slick under my fingertips. "Are you okay?" "I think so." "Where are we?" I swiveled, trying to catch any glimmer of light. I couldn't tell if we were still in the storage room or somewhere new. The darkness made it hard to focus. I don't know, I answered. I think we fell or something. Suddenly, a faint flicker of light shone from my pocket. I felt for my phone, the screen glowing like a lighthouse in the black. I hit the button and was instantly blinded by the brightness. My eyes squinted, adjusting, and I turned to face Jen. She sat beside me, her face pale but determined. What now? I took a deep breath. We can't just stay here. We need to find a way out. I stood up, still feeling the adrenaline surging. I scanned the area around us under the dim light. We seemed to be in a narrow corridor. The walls were painted a sickly green, peeling and mottled with age. A weird smell, like mildew mixed with something burnt, wafted through the air. Do you hear that? Jen said, her voice a sharp whisper. I strained to listen, and there it was, a soft scuttling sound, just at the edge of my hearing. It felt like we were being watched. We need to move, I said, pocketing my phone for light. Now. We hurried down the narrow hallway, each step echoing ominously. I felt like the shadows were reaching out for us. Just as we turned a corner, I stumbled upon something unexpected, a set of heavy metal doors, slightly ajar. Should we go in there? Jen asked, glancing at me nervously. I hesitated. It felt like a trap, but we didn't have any other options. Let us check it out, I said, pushing the door open with caution. Inside was a large room filled with old, forgotten hospital beds and broken equipment. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Dust danced in thin beams of the faded light streaming through grimy windows. I squinted, something shiny catching my eye in the corner. Ethan, look! Jen pointed to the far side of the room. A small door, equipped with a heavy padlock, loomed there. Maybe it leads somewhere, I suggested, my resolve hardening. We needed to find an exit fast. As we edged closer, the sound of footsteps returned. This time it was louder. I turned, fear pooling in my stomach. Something was coming. We need to hurry, I urged, my heart racing faster by the second. I reached for the lock, but just as my fingers brushed against it, a loud crash echoed outside the door we had entered through. Someone's there! Jen gasped, her eyes wild. My hands fumbled at the lock, adrenaline pushing me forward as I heard the footsteps drawing near. I managed to twist the lock open just as the shadows began to spill into the room. Go! I shouted, shoving the door open and pulling Jen inside after me. We squeezed through and slammed the door shut. But the echo of the laughter chased us down the next corridor, closing in as we navigated the unfamiliar darkness. I could feel the panic rising, just as the whispers crept back into my mind. I knew we weren't safe, not yet. And then I saw it, another glimmer, a sign painted on the wall ahead. My heart sank as I read it, adrenaline spiking once more. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Before I could process it, we heard the laughter again, and this time it was much closer. The laughter grew louder, wrapping around us like a noose. Ethan, this way! Jen pulled me toward a doorway on our right, and without thinking, we rushed through it. It opened into a dimly lit room filled with medical equipment older than either of us. Wires hung from the ceiling like vines, and the air buzzed with a sharp tang of antiseptic and decay. I glanced back, half expecting to see a figure emerge from the shadows, but the hallway felt eerily silent now, as if it was holding its breath. What do we do? Jen whispered, her voice barely breaking the stillness. I could see panic creeping into her expression, mirroring my own unease. Let us find something, anything to use, I replied, scanning the abandoned room. Plastic sheets hung in corners, a disarray of forgotten instruments scattered on shelves coated in dust. Just then, the ground beneath us vibrated slightly, a tremor, followed by that laughter again, far off but unmistakably close. I tensed. We don't have time, I said, and we dove to the far side of the room. There were old lockers haphazardly lined against one wall. They appeared to be intact. I pulled one open, revealing crumpled uniforms and old medical journals, disintegrating in the humid air. I rifled through, the sounds out in the hallway growing bolder, echoing against the steel lockers. Just then, I spotted something shiny beneath an old gown, a scalpel. I snatched it up, its weight solid and reassuring, and turned to Jen. If we have to defend ourselves, but before she could respond, the laughter morphed into screeching, bouncing off the walls. They're here, Ethan! She shouted, panic breaking through her voice. Scraps of paper fluttered from the shelves behind me, stirring up dust. Stay close, I said, my voice barely steady. Together, we slid through a narrow passageway that connected the room to another corridor, the scalpel gripped tightly in my hand. The laughter faded as we crept forward, but the feeling of eyes upon us lingered. As we moved cautiously through the next round of corridors, it felt like entering a labyrinth, turning corners only to confront more darkness and echoing silence. This doesn't feel right, Jen muttered, her voice quivering. What if we're just running in circles? I forced myself to focus. There's got to be an exit. We just need to stick together, I reassured her, though I questioned if my own words had any truth. Suddenly, we turned a corner and stumbled onto a larger open area. Sunlight streamed through shattered windows, illuminating what appeared to be a reception desk. Dust motes danced in the rays, and for a split second, I could almost pretend we were safe. But then I saw pale figures flickering in and out at the edges of the light, children with hollow eyes and cheeky grins, waiting just out of reach where the shadows thrived. Ethan, it's happening again! Jen gasped, noticing them too. Run! I shouted, and we dashed for the double doors set across the room, heart pounding wildly. I felt hands just brushing against my jacket as I passed, icy tendrils that sent shockwaves through me. The doors swung open, cold air hit us, a rush of freedom, but as I stepped outside, I felt a pull, an overwhelming dread. We emerged into a courtyard, weeds breaking through cracked pavement, but before us, the exit loomed, a wrought iron gate locked tight. Someone must have the key! I yelled, panting. There's got to be a way. I ran to the gate, desperately shaking the latch, but it wouldn't budge. The laughter echoed again, bouncing off the walls as if taunting us from the shadows. Ethan! Jen's voice turned to a whisper. I turned to look at her, and in that moment I realized she was staring past me, her gaze distant and unmoving. I turned just as a figure emerged from the shadows, a small child, face pale, eyes wide, but it wasn't just any child. It was a familiar face, one I had seen that terrifying night. Help me, the child's voice echoed, sounding simultaneous with the laughter. Join us, I swallowed hard, instincts screaming at me to turn away. No! I shouted, shaking my head. We want tea. Join you. The laughter crescendoed into madness, and I could see others slowly emerging, their features distorting in the sunlight. I grabbed Jen's arm, yanking her away from the door. We have to go. Now. We turned back toward the hospital, realizing there was only one way forward and no way back. With the freezing shadows closing in, we plunged into the entrance, the darkness swallowing us whole again as we raced down the hall, laughing still trailing behind us. I didn't know what I'd found, and I didn't want to know. All I knew was we had to escape, a thought that lingered long inside my mind even as the children's laughter echoed with every step we took, promising they would play with us forever. The heavy door slammed shut behind us. I still think about that shift sometimes. The way the lights flickered, and how the air thickened with tension. I've never returned to that hospital after that night. I don't think I ever could. Some questions remain, lingering in the edges of my mind. Was it all real, or just a trick of darkness? But the laughter? That felt all too real when I let myself remember.